those darkest times, multicultural media was absolutely critical. So that's the first thing, thank you. Secondly, thank you in a broader context. Our multiculturalism is our greatest asset. We know that, we've always known that. And whether it's through the work of the BMC, whether it's through the work of volunteers and community organisations across the whole state, ultimately getting messages out there, getting information out there, giving people the confidence and the facts and the information so they can be involved and engaged, you guys play a critical role in that. It just wouldn't happen without you. And I know that there's been some tough times as advertising revenue has fallen during those COVID times. There was $2.9 million worth of support that we provided that got you through. It was really important. But now, as we look to 23 with a real sense of confidence and a real sense of optimism, I think, for this summer and indeed pushing well out of COVID and that COVID exceptionalism that we've had to have in place being something of the past, it's now time for us to take another step forward. Mm-hmm. So as you know, we made a commitment some time ago to 5% of our advertising by being in multicultural media. Then we made a slight adjustment, and it's not in any way to be critical of SBS, but it was to say the SBS portion, because not all of that goes into really targeted programming, we would do the 5% and whatever we did on SBS, given that SBS has become very targeted in some parts and more generalist in others. So it was not at SBS's expense, but it meant you guys got a bigger share. The good news is that we're running, over these last 3 years, we're running at closer to 10% of our buy because of the effort we've put into making sure that every community gets the messages, whether it's fire, flood, all sorts of other safety programs, and then the COVID stuff on top. So what we're going to do if we are re-elected is we're going to bump it up from 5% to 15%. Which I hope, I'm very confident it's a bit of a stretch, but we'll get there. I think the fact that we're almost delivering 10, so I've got the actual numbers here, which may surprise you. 18-19 was 5.3%, 19-20, 7.6, 2021, 9.6, and 21-22 was 10.2%. So we can do this if we're determined to do it. So there'll be a bit of COVID in there. So if we say it's 5%, at a stretch we can get to 10, I think we should all push to get to 15. And we think that's exactly the way to make sure that you've got the revenue that you need to thrive, to keep telling the story, to keep being a trusted voice, to keep making sure that everyone's getting the information they need to participate, to be part of this brilliant multiculturalism that defines us. It's not an add-on, it's not a nice to have, it's us, it's who we are. And I think more so than any other state. We don't tolerate it, we celebrate it, and it's a critically important thing. The other thing is that there's a further $1.5 million for a couple of grant rounds for multicultural media. So that'll be, you'll bid into that fund with different ideas, different projects, different things that you need, and then there'll be a process and the department will work out who gets that money. So I think the ad buy is really important because it's about revenue and giving you that sense of certainty. And then there'll be other specific projects that you want to work on, and that $1.5 million will be there for you to apply into for grants to come out of that. So those two things together, I think, mean we can be confident that there's a much more certain future for multicultural media, and our multiculturalism doesn't work without you. So if you value multiculturalism, we have to value and support you, and that's exactly what these policies do. The other point I'd make is, you've probably all covered this, but we made some announcements the other day about $50 million multicultural facilities fund. There's a component for the Chinese community, 10. There's a component for the Indian community, another 10. There's $5 million for the Islamic community, which we think is important, together with some other announcements we've made around a campaign to tackle Islamophobia, to tackle anti-Semitism, to deal with security issues in a number of different places, because we know that that kind of extremism is on the rise. It's something that is very sad, and I don't like having to invest money to keep people safe like that. I wish that wasn't a challenge, but it is. And then, of course, a couple of things that are not necessarily, well, one other thing that I'll mention. The Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, the name of which has never sat well with me. I think tolerance is the wrong word. Kind of worked at the time, but it's the wrong word. We're going to have a review into that because we are concerned that this extremism, this hate speech and terrible treatment of people, particularly those who are quite obviously of a multicultural background in terms of the way they look, where they pray, the way they live, some of the abuse, some of the terrible behaviour, it's on the rise, and very few people have been prosecuted under that act. So that says to me, if bad behaviour is going up, but the number of people that are being called to account for that is pretty well steady, the thresholds for action against those people are too high. So we're going to have a proper and really important review of that. And the community will be involved, and we'll have submissions, and you guys will be important in reaching out to your communities to make sure everybody that wants to be involved in that is, so that we can potentially, I think almost certainly, make some changes to that act. We need to make an example of some very, very bad people who are behaving just as badly, and there's no place for that. There's no place for that in the modern Victoria. So that's a few practical things that we can do, together with as many other announcements that we've made. The multicultural story time, thank you so much for everyone who's covered that. I was just saying to the guys as we walked in, I went on